Hey everyone, and welcome to CTV. My name is Sierra Artemis, and I am your host. Guys, today's episode is sponsored by League of the Extraordinary products and services for extraordinary clientele. They specialize in production for all types of clothing, that's bathing suits, bags, hats, stickers, tags, and more, guys. So that information is going to be on the screen periodically throughout the show. And of course, guys, if you're following me on social media, if not, be sure to do so on Facebook at Sierra Artemis TV, on YouTube, Sierra Artemis, and be sure to check out my website, sierraartemis.com. There you can view past episodes, get information on upcoming episodes, and you can also check out a little bit more on me if you need a little bit of backstory, guys. And as always, I'm always promoting my peeps, guys, and you should be too. So make sure that you are supporting your friends. That's anybody with a business, initiative, any of that, guys. Make sure you support them. Like, share, comment on their posts because, guys, it makes a very, very big difference. Word of mouth is the biggest part of the biggest form of advertising, and you don't have to spend a dime. Maybe you don't have the money, or maybe you've already spent money and you feel like I've done my part, but you have not. Continue to share your friends' posts, guys, and I'm going to always advocate for that. All right, guys. So the purpose of CTV is to highlight minority businesses, creators, and entrepreneurs in hopes to inspire people like you on the other side of the screen to go out and chase your goals and your dreams. And if there's no room at the table, guys, you can always create your own. So my guest today has turned the tables on his own life, and now he's reaching down and pulling others up. I have the founder of Path2Redemption. I have Lester Young. Hello, Lester. How are you?
Peace and blessings. All is well. All is well.
Awesome. So can you give us a little bit of information about Path2Redemption? Tell us a little bit of information about Path2Redemption and the significance of the name.
Path2Redemption is a nonprofit organization that I founded while I was serving time in South Carolina Department of Correction. I was sentenced to life in prison at the age of 19 years old. And during that time, I was searching for redemption. And I found that most of the men that were inside of the prison along with me were searching for redemption. So it's like God put it in my heart to create this program, Path2Redemption, where it help individuals turn their setbacks into comebacks by helping them change their mindset and the behavior choices while they're incarcerated so that they can succeed and move forward in life.
That's awesome. So since you have experience in the prison system, do you feel like, the system properly rehabilitates people to re-enter society?
This is, from a person who's served 22 years in prison, I would say no. The Department of Correction here in South Carolina lacks a lot of rehabilitation programs, especially for violent offenders. As I mentioned earlier, I was sentenced to life at 19 years old, and it was a violent crime. So that means that I was not eligible for any programs in the Department of Correction at that time. So I was basically just sat there to just serve up to my last 2 years before I became eligible for parole. So that meant that I would have to sit idle for 18 years. And we know that it's hard to sit. How could you transform a person after sitting idle for 18 years? So I'm really thankful to have like chaplains and other individuals that took a liking to me and saw something in me that started feeding me books. And that's where my personal rehabilitation began, by me investing in myself, by reading books and having mentors that saw something in me while I was serving time.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit, guys. I didn't give him a proper introduction, and I apologize. But Lester is a mentor, a life coach, and a community organizer for formerly incarcerated men and women, as he mentioned. And of course, he said that he spent a little bit of time in the system as well. And you said that you felt like you had the chaplains and people like that would come in. But other than that, there was pretty much no support there to rehabilitate you. So basically, if maybe they didn't see something in you, or maybe let's say you weren't a self-motivated person, do you think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people continue that cycle of going in and out of the system?
Yes, absolutely. When you think about your life prior to prison, you have a lifestyle of bad habits. Now you're inside of a prison system where bad habits are reinforced, and there's no There's no positive affirmation of your greatness. Is always an affirmation of all of the criminal things that you've become, or the identity that you have wrapped around and believed that you develop from your criminal activities. So yeah, you have to like find some sense of motivation. And unfortunately, most of the men and women inside of that prison system, they have a lifestyle of bad habits, and it's hard to turn that off and begin creating good habits. And you're in an environment where people see you less than human beings, that don't see that you have the potential to be something greater than an inmate's number.
And you know what I think of now that, since you said that, it sounds like there's two prisons. There's the prison that you're in physically, and then you have that mental prison that you're kind of forced to, think about things, and sometimes people aren't, maybe they're not thinking about positive things at the time, maybe they're, and then there's some people like you that are motivated when they come out. So, I mean, I do believe, and I have no experience here, but correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems like it's two prisons.
Yeah. I agree. And that's the thing, is that there's a mental, psychological prison that you were in prior to your incarceration. So now, like for me, I was already in a mental prison, and that's with low sense of self-worth, lack of self-identity, no self-esteem, no confidence, and a bad narrative that told me that I'll die, I'll go to prison before I was 19 years old. So those are the things that were circulating in my head. So now here it is, I'm sitting in prison. Now I'm in the physical prison, but before my incarceration, I was already in a mental prison, like so many individuals that are inside of the system, or actually walking out of here, out into society now. They're still living in a mental prison, and it don't necessarily that mental prison will lead you to incarceration, but it leaves you to live a life that is not your truest potential. You're not living your truest potential because of that narrative that you have told yourself, or you have allowed your social environment to place upon you, that stagnates who you are, who God has created you to become.
That's awesome. That's an awesome way of putting it. And so I have a couple questions, to follow up with that. So what advice do you have for that young person that may be incarcerated right now, or that person that may have recently served time?
The one that is currently incarcerated, I would definitely say, utilize your time while you're in prison. And I know this is hard, but understand that there's two things in prison. There's two levels of prison that I discovered. There's a recriminalization and there's a decriminalization. What is recriminalization, decriminalization? Most individuals are in an environment where they constantly get recriminalized. They continuously learn new ways to continue to carry out crimes. So they sit idle and they just get recriminalized. So I would tell this individual that utilize their time while they're incarcerated to decriminalize their thinking. And this requires a lot of strength and zeal to say that in spite of what the norm is doing, I'm going to change that path, and I'm going to travel a path that is less likely traveled for those in prison. And that's really just begin changing your mindset by first identifying what is a criminal thinking, and then from there start understanding what were some of the core issues that led to your incarceration. We all have a core behavior that led to a decision making, and unfortunately led to a person incarcerated. So I would say take the time to really dig deep within yourself to understand, unlock those areas of self-denial, so that you can begin to address those issues of abuse, abandonment, addiction. Where did they come from? Like how did that shape you to be the person that you are right now? So that once you are able to identify that, then you can free yourself before you actually are free.
So what you're telling me now, so is this a little bit of what you kind of tell people when you go and speak in the prisons and you go and speak to them? And I'm kind of curious now, especially with COVID restrictions, how you're still mentoring to those folks that are still serving time.
The prison system, some of the prison system have pivoted, just like all of us have pivoted over the last year to Zooms, Microsoft Teams. I've been hosting numerous classes via Microsoft Teams, because some of the prisons, they're allowing now their staff members to set up Zooms so that the individuals continue to get this information that is needed.
That's good.
And then right now I'm approved to go back into the prison system. You just have to take a COVID test and practice, because most of the guys in South Carolina have been already vaccinated. So I'm able to go back into the prison system and continuously helping individuals focus on not just the mindset, but the behavior choices, but really start changing, understanding the power of their habits and how it's important for them to change those criminal behavior habits to be able to start creating healthier habits that is going to allow them to be successful and persevere through challenges after incarceration.
when I sat down and I thought about these questions, I tried to put myself mentally in the place of a person who is, serving time, like how do you feel friends, family, and loved ones can what can they do to better support someone who is in that position?
That's a pretty good question. Because unfortunately, you find so many individuals, depending upon the length of the prison sentence, most families just move on with their lives, and these individuals are set back here without that family connection, which I believe we're human, we're social beings, so we need to have that connection with our family. And that's a lot of families don't realize, but that is one of the key components or the key ingredients to a person's rehabilitation is having that family connection. For me, for the 22 years and 5 months I was incarcerated, my family was always there. And they were supportive, and they were not only just supportive, but they helped me make the investment in my intellectual growth. And that's by sending me books, providing me with the funds to be able to buy the books, to take the corresponding courses and stuff like that. So family members, you have to understand that your loved ones, rehabilitation starts while they're in prison, and it starts by you taking the time to just making an investment in them, like really challenge them and encourage them to take a different path. Now, some of these individuals, due to bad habits and just the whole environment, they may not really take that chance initially to bring about transformation, but just be patient with them, because they're unpacking so much trauma that took place prior to the incarceration, and sometimes the prison environment is not conducive for them to release the trauma. So it's so much dynamics that plays a part in that prison environment, and family members just got to really understand that this person may have been raised a certain way, been exposed to certain forms of trauma, that they just need to be there to show them that they love them in spite of the mistakes, and then begin to create an exit plan for them.
I think you made a very valuable point there, because I'm pretty sure, when we're kids growing up, my family would always say, well, don't get in trouble because your friends ain't gonna come visit you, and it's like you want your family at least, because you're like, gosh, you're my blood, and I'm pretty sure that, if your family's giving up on you, it kind of makes you even harder. It's like, man, my own flesh and blood, they don't even care about me. And I can imagine that you're in that psychological battle with yourself, since you have so much time, especially yourself, since you spent over 2 decades. I mean, how was the world for you when you came back out? Like, did you like a caveman? I'm sure of it.
Wow, that's like, that's like a really it was a real challenge for me. Because I always tell people, if you want to make a comparison to what 20 years look like, I came up in the 90s where we had beepers, and now we have cell phones, right? And they're all touch screens, the Apple, et cetera, et cetera. I came home to a completely different world. And this is why I say that the society, the prison system really didn't prepare me for the acclimation back into the community, because no one really told me that this world had completely changed when it came down to just the stigma of having a felony conviction. How hard would it be to get employed? How hard would it be now to get housing? How hard it would be to even just get life insurance, because some life insurance companies don't allow you to get life insurance if you have a felony. Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation, right? But so no one really prepared you for the culture shock, going into an environment, into a store, restaurant, and have to order. I remember being paralyzed emotionally when I had to make a choice to order something from a menu, when for 22 years, I never had to make a choice, because I knew exactly what I was being fed every day in prison. Just as simple as I remember going to the Popeyes and had to order something. And my mentor who took me there after I got out of prison, he ordered something. And I remember standing in the line, like I did not know what to order. So I was like, yo, whatever he got, let me get it, right? And the cashier rung it up, and then she gave me a cup. And then you all know, when you go to these machines, they got like 100 flavors of soda, right? All I drank in prison was water and tea, right? Those were the 2 choices. Now I'm at this machine, and it's a touchscreen machine, and it was extremely intimidating to put a cup and trying to figure out how the soda is going to come out. You hit one, then 10 other flavors come up. You have a line of people standing up behind you waiting on you. It's like, are you stupid or anything like that you don't understand this?
You talking about the digital fountain? You talking about the digital fountain? Oh, wow. Yeah, I still don't like those.
Yeah, but think about a person who's been in prison for 2 years, and now you at this digital, and you pushing these buttons, and you don't know what. So you push the cup, and it's still no. It's so much. And it was overwhelming. So I use that now to say that when an individual walk out of prison, these are the things that this is why, again, family is so important, is to help individuals walk through these particular challenges, the culture shock, and even the anxiety, the depression, all of the panic attacks, all of these different things is surface back. And going back again to what I mentioned initially is trauma, right? So now you didn't experience a level of trauma in prison, and all these things, now you're returning back into the community. These are all now triggers to this trauma that may cause you now to flee back into a lifestyle that
where you're comfortable
with, because the challenge is too overwhelming for you emotionally, and it shuts you down, right? So that's why now I say that we have to work with these individuals in their transition, like take them to the Walmart or to whatever grocery store and help them learn how to operate a self-serving line. Like when you go through a self-serving line, you got to push buttons. Imagine a person did 20 years, 30 years. I know one of my friends just did 37 years. You know how paranoid he is to go into a grocery store right now? So
that's crazy. That's crazy. I you know what? And until I spoke with you, that's not something I would have even thought of. You know, something as simple as making choices. You know, that's insane. Would you say your mentorship started in it while you were behind bars? You know, when you know, once you've already been acclimated? Because I'm pretty sure it's like this system, like you're the newbie, and then there's some people that's already been there, and they kind of bring you in, and then now you're the OG, and now you know. More people coming in, and so you kind of mentor them. So would you say you were one of those guys, like, you know, I see me in this young person, let me go ahead and just, you know, give them that wisdom?
Yeah, that's where like my first book, The 5 Stages of Incarceration, was written. I wrote this book 15 years before I was released from prison, The 5 Stages of Incarceration.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it was me doing a self-analysis of me, like Lester, who are you that led you to this incarceration? And when I started breaking these stages down of my incarceration, I started realizing that there were more men inside of that prison system just like me, was struggling with abuse, struggling with abandonment, struggling with distant neglect, struggling with anger, struggling with victimization, struggling with the word forgiveness, struggling with transformation. So I remember this. I was watching an Oprah Winfrey show one day in prison, and she had a show on about journaling, the power of journaling, right? And I watched that show when she was talking about create a journal of gratitude so that it would help transform your thinking in your darkest moments, right? So here it is, I'm about 22 years old sitting in prison, and this was like 1995, 96. And I still had 2012 before I even became eligible to even look at a parole board. That was like a high mountain to climb, right? So now think about 1996. I'm sitting on this bunk, and now I'm like full with so much hurt, pain, loss, wanting to give up, just really wanted to give up in that prison environment because it was prison beats you down emotionally, right? You're beat down every day. And she said, start a journal. And I remember went to the prison canteen and got a journal. I started writing down every day, being very intentional about what am I grateful for in spite of my circumstances. And from there, it started helping me to now dig deep within myself because I couldn't confide in anyone about my pain. Like, how was I feeling? I couldn't go tell a dude that because they look at me as soft and so on and so forth, right? So this is where I started this whole journaling, in which brought about these different books that I've actually released now. So yeah, my mentoring started while I was in prison because I saw the prison was not addressing those areas that I felt like most of the men that needed these areas to be addressed so that they can move forward in their lives.
Was it therapeutic to you too? Because I'm pretty sure, you know, not just the conditions of being in the system or being behind bars. I really hate calling it a prison. I really hate calling it a jail. I really hate calling it that, but I know that's what it is. But I try to avoid because it's something in me that makes it uncomfortable to me. You know, it's like modern day slavery to me. And so it's like, I kind of, you know, I never spent time behind bars, but it's triggering to me because number one, not just because I have a son, not because I have Black men in my lives, but the stigma behind being a Black person behind bars. But I know that's what it was. It was a prison. That's what it was. I mean, I should just address it for what it is. But I feel like, you know, like we were talking about rehabilitation and such. I mean, do they even offer you counseling when you come out? Because this is, I'm pretty sure something you said about, I'm feeling some type of way, but I can't let the guys know that because it's the sign of weakness, and so now when you come out of prison, how do you escape that mindset? The same way you come out of prison and you can't even make a simple choice as to what you would like to drink or put in your body. How do I now not just confront feeling, but how do I release those feelings? Because I've been filling this cup up for so long and I've never poured it out.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things that there's a lack of with those who are returning home from prison, is seeing the value of counseling and therapy. It's like we already know that in most of the Black communities, therapy and therapy is a bad stigma for most. That's why a lot of Black men don't go now. So you could imagine you have this tough exterior image of you macho. You just walking out of prison. You've done all of this time, and now someone's telling you to go to a therapist, and it's like, no, I'm not going. But I believe that going to therapy, it should be a part of one's reentry plan, and it was for me, because there's so many things going to bubble back up after you're released from prison. Like it's going to be so much. And some family members may have seen this, is that individuals get out of prison, they're in their 40s, but they actually are still in the age of 19 years old. Incarcerated. So family members are like, why is he acting like he's 19? That right there lets you know that this person needs some counseling to help him or her understand that mindset, you're stuck there in 1990.
Like a time capsule.
Time capsule.
You're frozen in time.
And you're frozen. And then you look at some individuals, they end up in relationships with women after they're released, or they were dating women while they were in prison, and these individuals walked out of prison, and now their significant others are saying that this person is not the same. Absolutely, he or she is not the same, because it was good to conversate over a phone and through letters and maybe a 3-hour visit. Now this person is actually home, and you get a chance to see the mindset of where the person's at, and you're like, wow. You wasn't prepared for this, and then it's not really a counseling, it's a separation. So I always tell brothers now, like the men that I mentor and prepare them, like, yo, your reentry plan has to be counseling, because you sat in prison, you seen people get killed, stabbed, you suppress all of your pain and emotion, and now you walk out of prison, you're not healthy, you're not emotionally and mentally healthy. You didn't pack stuff in your life for 20 years, and not even on top of that, you look at the men and women who've experienced so much pain prior to prison. Like, it's so much trauma there. So yeah, reentry counseling has to be a part of that component, so that person can truly thrive after their incarceration, emotionally, mentally, have that ability to connect with people, because prison can cause you to be very callous and standoffish, don't know how to express yourself, so on and so forth.
And I'm thinking about something else that you mentioned earlier about, and it stood out to me as well, where you said that there's certain things that you can't even do when you get out of like, literally, there are laws that say someone who has these amount of offenses or this level of offense, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so it's almost like once you get out, once you've served time for your punishment, you're still being punished.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, why?
People not prepared for that. They're not prepared for what is called the collateral consequences. There's 48,000 collateral consequences attached to a person's felony. What is the collateral consequences? There is barriers that prevents a person from moving forward in society. And going back again, when you think about prison, you have to think about slavery. See, these are like black codes. They were the same. Jim Crow. All of these things were instilled to prevent black people from moving forward. So now prisons were created after slavery, so-called after slavery was abolished. But they put things in place that prohibit the individual who are released from the prison system to really move forward in society. It's something as simple as employment, which is a key component of a person's rehabilitation. Most businesses in this state, in this country, do background checks, right? And when there's a background check, there's a denial. A person is denied opportunity. Housing is another key component for a person's livelihood and rehabilitation. So most of the how places that rent, they do background checks. You have a felony, you denied this. So what do you do now? You can't find a job. You can't find a place to stay. Now we look at life insurance. Some companies, because you have a felony conviction, they would not allow you to even get life insurance. That's a collateral consequences, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. So now you have people really trying to push through this stuff. So if you haven't really put the stuff in you to reverse that thinking and the behavior and build that type of resilience, when you walk out of prison 6 months, you could find yourself reverting back just because of the stigma in the what I call
the challenges too.
The challenges you face. So this is again why family and community and society is so important. And this is why so many of these laws that have all been in existence for the last 100 years needs to change when it comes down to employment. People who have been in prison, part of their rehabilitation is employment. So why deny a person an opportunity for employment? Like, why? Like, you know, but they're doing it. And so now that forces people to now get it out of the mud, and they may engage back in criminal activity as a
circle
of that. Yes.
It's a continuous cycle.
Reducing recidivism, we reducing criminality in certain communities, depending upon the zip codes. When you see certain communities have more gang violence, more violence in this community, then you have to just look at how many of these individuals living in this community that have a felony conviction, how many of them have been given opportunity for education and employment, and most of them have that felony, and it causes them to go back into criminal behavior. So we change that community by employing and educating people to move forward with their lives, you know?
Right. Another thing I was thinking about was, I know there's a lot of people, and I've read a lot of stories about people and like yourself that have come out and started businesses. So would you say, are there any grants? Are there anything that kind of prevents you from getting grants? Or any roadblocks in that area, starting a business or getting funding?
Like when we had the COVID relief funds coming through, during the pandemic, a lot of business owners were getting funds, right? Because a person had a felony conviction. When they do that, and even though they have been running a successful business, that felony conviction prevented a lot of people who had it in their names. They wasn't able to get the funds. They was not able to get the PPP because they had a felony conviction, but they had a thriving business. So this is what I'm talking about, how our society, unfortunately, we want people to move forward after incarceration, but we don't really understand all of the collateral consequences inside there. So now even like certain banks are not giving individuals PPP because now they have to do background checks. A quick story, one of my friends who's running like pulling cars, he's been running this business for years and had a relationship with this bank for years. He went in to get the PPP, and guess what? They told him, say, "Oh, you're a great customer." But then they wonder, like, why are you taking so long for me to get this loan? They did the background check, and they came back and said, hey, the head branch manager says, because you have a felony conviction, we can't give this to you. But you have all my money. You see what I've been doing in the last 2 to 3 years. You know, but that's sometimes that don't really have a great value in the eyes of some people. So I strongly believe in entrepreneurship after incarceration. But again, there's so many things that deny individuals for really even thriving in entrepreneurship space. If you have it in your name, if the LLC is in your name, the chances are you may have a lot of restrictions because of the felony conviction.
And you know what? It really irritates me. And I'm just comparing and contrasting here, slavery and incarceration, same difference, right? So my thing is, it's like you have so many people telling Black people, you know, as a result of slavery, there's still a lot of disenfranchisements, or, you know, there's a lot of things that are setting us back because of that. And the same thing for people that have been incarcerated. And here's the thing. It's like, you get the same thing every time. They always say, well, why can't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Well, look at all the stipulations and all the roadblocks and everything that you're putting in our way to prevent us to be able to do so. So how are you going to tell me to run in a race when you got cinder blocks on my feet? You know what I'm saying? Like, wow, that is insane. So is there do you know of anything? I'm pretty sure you do. How can we get these laws turned? Like, what can we do? What can us as people do?
Well, one of the powers that we have in our society is that, one, I think that people need to be educated about the new, what is called, like Michelle Alexander wrote a book called The New Jim Crow Law, like a must read for anyone, right? But she showed you how the new Jim Crow law has been placed now in this day and time, where the new Jim Crow laws are those who are living with felony convictions. You're Black and you have a felony conviction, you're not access to things. So people first, I would say, educate yourself about these particular new Jim Crow laws, these collateral consequences, and now start seeing that your power of voting, when these legislators and presidential candidates and senators be coming to our community, we have to start having that conversation on the agenda. Like, what are you doing with this particular population? Because you're thinking about 1 in 3 Black men in our communities have a felony conviction. That's a lot of people. 70 million people in our country have a felony conviction. They're being blocked out. So we have to educate ourselves and start holding our elected officials to hold them to that. Like for me, what I've been doing since I got out, when I realized the biggest challenge for me when I got out of prison was employment. So I was like, wow, I can't believe I've done all this time and I'm required to pay these fines and fees and I can't get a job. So once I got a job, I started pushing for a ban-the-box ordinance to be passed in the city of Columbia, all of this across the state of South Carolina, because I believe that the cities and the counties, the council members and the mayors, they're elected officials. So why can't, and not only that, but you think about when you go right here in Columbia on I-20, I-26, I-95, you find people in orange jumpsuits working, picking up litter off of the side of the highways. They're at certain state houses. There's certain places across the state. They're getting free labor from these people, right? So you mean to tell me that when they walk out of prison, they can't get a job with the city? You know, that they were actually employed for while they were in prison? So that's when I started pushing and got a lot of these things, ban-the-box ordinances passed, so that now, like, hey, I'm good enough to work for you while I'm in prison. I should be good enough to work for you when I get out of prison. So that's why the city of Columbia and the city council, they passed the ban-the-box ordinance, which now allow people with felony convictions to get employed. And we have over 6 other counties in the state of South Carolina that's passed it. We still need a whole lot more. But this is how family and friends and individuals get involved, is get your local officials to understand why they need to understand passing policies that will give individuals an opportunity for hiring, even SNAP benefits. You familiar with SNAP? A person with a felony conviction, think about a mother, right, who went to jail for drug addiction, right? They have passed policies that deny mothers and fathers SNAP benefits when they walk out of prison because they have a drug addiction or have a drug offense. So now when mother comes home, she's trying to regain custody for children, trying to just thrive when most of the companies are denying her employment. And because of a drug addiction, a drug offense charge, she's not able to get SNAP benefits that will be able to feed them until they get to the next stage of employment. So this is what we have to educate why we have to educate ourselves on this, because we see people out here and say, why, man, you should be doing this. Nah, there's too much collateral barriers and consequences preventing people from pulling themselves up, because they didn't have any boots to pull up any scraps from. They didn't have any. They were walking around barefoot.
And that's crazy and insane that, and most of the people that are in the system are Black. And it's like, we are, you know what I'm saying? And here's my thing, especially like to your point about a mother who may be struggling with addiction. Why not find resources to help that mother instead of throwing her in jail? When her only crime was an illness that y'all call everybody, excuse me, when everybody else get addicted to medicine, it's an illness.
Yeah. We see the bias, the double standards when it comes down to Black and white treatment. This is why, again, we have to start electing individuals that have the Black agenda in mind. But and not only that, but like you said initially in opening, if they don't allow us to a table, we need to create our own table. We need to create our own table with our own agenda and implement policies that is going to free our community to allow them to thrive. Because too many of us, 1 in 3 Black people in this country, have a felony conviction, and it's sad because now that felony conviction, and please, I want your audience to understand, is that I'm not taking ownership for the decisions that I've made. I've taken full ownership for the decision. I've served my time, and most individuals in prison, we're not like, no, we're saying that I've taken ownership. I'm taking responsibility for what I've done. You sentenced me this amount of time. I've done this time, and I'm back in the community because it's correctional. I want to change my life, but you now telling me I can't because of all of these particular things that are hindering me forth. You know, so I just really want your audience to understand that brothers like myself, women like myself, women who have been incarcerated, men who are incarcerated, we take ownership. But you have to understand that the playing field after incarceration is not equally level. Whites can return back into the community, and they family members have connections. They automatically get employed, and that felony conviction is not even a hindrance for them, right? When we're talking about home ownership, blacks as a collective, we don't own that many homes. We're not homeowners, we're renters, right? A white person, white male or white female, they go into home ownership immediately. Their families connect them with that. For us, we're renters. We rent apartments and houses, and because of felony conviction, you can't even rent a house. So now where you're left to sleep in the streets. You're left to sleep in your car. You're left to do these things that is going to hold you back. So the field is not level. The laws are not level, but understand that we take ownership for this. I just really want that to be echoed in this conversation. I'm not saying that we're not taking ownership. I take ownership for the decisions that I've made. I'm not crying. I made the mistakes, and I'm doing everything I can as a human being to use this as stepping stones. But as I said, there's so many people coming behind me don't have that type of resilience to pull themselves up, because again, the trauma and the things that they encountered is paralyzing.
And I'm sure, and I am certain that there are a ton of people that look up to you who have served time or are currently serving time, because not only are you just, because anybody can come to a jail or prison and speak and, rah motivation, but there's not many people that actually have experienced it. And I mean, you have definitely experienced it. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of people respect what you have to say, especially seeing how far you come from everything happens for a reason. Maybe what happened to you pushed you into your purpose so that you could relate to people in that situation, so you can help to pull them out. And I think you're doing a marvelous job of doing that.
I agree with you. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you're very knowledgeable. And I see you wasted no time. You learn what you needed to learn. And it's a lot to learn. It's tons to learn. You had like P2 or 5 PhDs while you were back there, pretty much. All the time. Yeah.
I utilize it wisely, because that's key. But I went also to, I went to prison at reading in a seventh grade level of education. I was a high school dropout. I was reading at a 7th grade level of education. And now when I look back at my lack of zeal or motivation to pursue when I was in school, going back again to the narrative, when you come in an environment, you live in an environment, or you in the community where people don't affirm you, people tell you you're not going to be this, you stop believing that narrative, right? So while I was in prison, this is where I began educating myself, started reading books, and started really enhancing my thinking, broadening my mind through reading different books. I was very intentional about what books I read. I didn't want to read any books that would add more to my criminal thinking. I wanted to focus on books that would change my thinking and my behavior and help me create habits that will allow me to move forward, that would get me a GED. I remember when I started going to school, people were looking at me like, man, you got a life sentence. Like, why would you want an education when you got a life sentence? You may die in prison. You may never get out of prison, because I had a 3% chance of ever being free again. But this is, I had a 3%. That's most people who are serving life in prison, who is eligible after 20 years. They have a 3% chance of ever being free. It's South Carolina has that system in place. And I was just one of the fortunate ones to have been released after 22 years. Some people have to do 30, 40 years before they're released from prison, with the type of sentence I had. So I know that God has his hand on me. I know that God has favored me to utilize this experiences to be able to do what I need to do now. But like I said, a 7th grade level of education came from people telling me that I was stupid, and me believing that I was not intelligent enough, and I started believing that narrative, and I just gave up on school. So here is a 19-year-old person reading at a 7th grade level education, never read a book in his life, and now he's forced to read books because that was his only mental jailbreak from prison, was starting to read books. So
and look at you now. You know more than they probably do. The irony.
Yeah, it's a blessing now. I love books. That's my passion now.
That's awesome. So guys, I'm here with mentor, inspirational speaker, and community organizer, Lester Young. He just gave us a little backstory, not necessarily in depth of his story. If you do want to check out his story, it's on his website, Path2Redemption.org. He goes a little bit more in depth about, his time and, a little bit about that backstory. And it's a little bit of his, you can get more information about his organization, Path2Redemption, there. And guys, that website is there. And I also have your Instagram. Just want to be sure. Do you have an email that'll be good? for
My
people to
email,
contact you?
if you go to my path2redemption.org, you can email me right from my website. So it's
Okay.
there. You can contact me, and you can also see all my social media platforms right there if you go to my to my website.
Awesome. Awesome. So guys, screenshot. That information is right there. That's this Instagram. That's Path2Redemption 515. Also, scrolling at the bottom of the screen, we have his website, path2redemption.org. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap us up today. I know we've already spent a lot of time, but I mean, this has been a great conversation. It's been very, very enlightening. I've learned some things, and my perspective has changed. I mean, I already had a perspective, but I never really had a chance to sit down. Like, I have a really close friend who spent 10 years, and him and I stayed in touch. He spent 10 years behind bars, and I remember I had to teach him how to use his phone when he came out, how to do, and so I remember that. And so let's talk a little bit about your books. I know you mentioned the 5 stages of incarceration, and then you have a couple others. I only have 2 of them in the pictures here.
The second one is called The 5 Stages of Growth: How I Transform My Life While Serving Life. That's my second book. It's really just about principles. Like, one of the principles that helped me transform my life is finding my voice. Like, how many of us today as an adult, we find ourselves not speaking from our authentic voice. We speak from the voice that our environment has given us. So that's how I was able to bring about true growth in myself, is one, finding my voice. The second stage of growth was healing from my past. In order for growth to really come about in any individual life, whether you're incarcerated or not, it's about, how do I heal? How do I heal from the broken childhood? How do I heal from being molested? How do I heal from being abused? How do I heal from seeing my parents go through what they went through? How do I heal from that? So in order for you to have true growth, you have to be able to heal from that. And this third thing is just having that mindset. Mindset is essential to your growth, but if you don't heal, you don't find your voice, you don't make peace with your past, it's going to always be that thing that is going to hold you down from being the woman or the man that you have been created to be. So that's what it's all about. How do I transform my life while serving life? It's a real deep help. It just causing you to do some deep introspection into who you are as a person and why you do what you do, and finding that why that will inspire you to build a legacy after you leave this earth.
That's amazing. And to know that it's almost like like your diary when you were writing majority of the stuff that you were writing.
Mm-hmm.
It was like your way to release like whatever you consumed. This was your way of letting out what it is that you had consumed all those years of what you've learned and what you've experienced. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And all the things that you've read. So let me ask you, so what is your, how do I put this? What is your favorite part of what you do?
My favorite part of what I do is just seeing people like take what I use, my information that I share with them, and see them years, months later have actually implemented, and they're changing. They have changed. Like, guys that I mentored in prison, they're home now, and to like get a call from them to say, man, I want you to come to my wedding, or hey, wow, I started this business. Let's meet for lunch and you can help me better understand my business plan. So that for me is like me seeing like everything that I've been pouring into people that God has carried me through and allowed me to learn, is to see people that I've shared it with and been passionate about giving it to them and then implementing it. So that to me is like my greatest reward and joy. Even while I was in prison, the thing that will lift my spirits every day in prison is to know that the young people, the men or the women, the men that I was working with in prison, is that they went from wanting to stab and wanted to commit suicide while they're in prison because the time was overwhelming for them, that they now found a sense of peace, and they were now giving back inside of the prison. They was found a purpose in prison. That to me was the greatest joy, even to this day when I go back into a prison.
I think that could be like a sub business, a purpose in prison. That's your third book. There you go.
From pain to purpose.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to add today? I know we spent quite a bit of time talking today.
Yeah, I would say just like I said, I mean, like we've said in the short time we've been on this call, is that I think that people really need to start seeing those that are currently incarcerated as human beings first and foremost, that we're human beings, that we made a mistake, And we deserve a second chance. We deserve a third chance, because if we're saying that whatever your faith is, if you're saying you believe in God, God gave you many chances, right? And we got to be looking at these individuals, like, how do we help these individuals in our community become better people? Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to help people heal as well. And these individuals that we see in these communities doing some things that we hate to see, we have to stop looking at it from the lens of just seeing the problem, but let's put on the lens of trauma. We don't talk about the trauma that most of these young people have endured for so many years, and there's only a way of them releasing it, right? So let's put on the lens of trauma, and let's dissect the problems versus being a judgment of the problem. Because with every iceberg, we only see the tip of the iceberg, but it's important that we go to the surface and see what were the things that built this iceberg to be this formidable thing that will destroy a ship. Well, it's floating, this mountain that is floating on the water. So I would just say that, like, we have to look at our community in the lens of trauma. For those who are in the mental health space, those who are counselors and mentors, stop looking at the problem, the root. Stop looking at the limbs, and let's start looking at the root of the problem. And you will see that there's a lot of trauma in the communities that we're living in, and what people are coming out of and returning to.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and everything that you're doing. It definitely doesn't go unnoticed. And I've definitely enjoyed our time here. Like I said, I've been enlightened. There's a lot of things that I didn't know, a lot of things that I myself want to be a little bit more involved in, because sometimes you don't know how to help. You don't know because you don't know. And I think it takes people like you that are willing to speak out, that are willing to change and willing to help other people to make the change, to really make the difference. I'm very hopeful that we might be able to get someone in office somewhere that takes prison reform serious. It might have to take someone who has had a family member. And I don't know what it's going to take, but whatever it takes, I hope that these things change soon, because it definitely is a ripple effect. It trickles down, like it affects everybody. The person can be away from their family and they're the provider, so it just causes generational ripples. It affects everybody. And so again, I thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
All right, guys. So I will have that information. I'm going to go ahead and put that right there. Make sure you check out Lester Young on IG. That's Path2Redemption 515. I also have the website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. There it is, path2redemption.org. On there, you can actually go and donate there too, guys. I did see a donate button. If that donate button doesn't work, you can definitely send him an email. His email, like you said, is on that Path2Redemption website. So I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into CTV. As always, be sure to check me out on social media. That's Sierra Artemis TV. That's on Facebook. Sierra Artemis on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on. And you can also check out my website, sierraartemis.com. There you can find past episodes, upcoming episodes, and any information that you might want to find on me. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors for this week episode. That is League of Extraordinary. I'm sorry. So they specialize in custom production for all types of clothing, bathing suits, bags, hats, stickers, and more. So be sure to check them out as well. That Facebook page, or the Instagram rather, is League XXO, and the website is leaguexxo.com, guys. And thank you again for tuning into CTV. I hope to see you guys next week. Hey everyone, my name is Sierra Artemis, and I'm the creator and host of CTV. So on CTV, I highlight minority businesses, creatives, and entrepreneurs. And right now, I'm looking for independent artists to showcase on my show. So that's musicians, rappers, gospel rappers, R&B singers, visual arts, the works. Be sure to tune in to CTV Saturdays at 7 p.m. That's YouTube at Sierra Artemis, and on Facebook at Sierra Artemis TV. So if you know someone, or if you're interested, be sure to email me at info@sierraartemis.com.